Contributor Afshin Rattansi now is joining us live from London. Hi, Afshin. Looks like then the US, the UK, ready to act. Looks like France and Turkey will go along with it. It's all but done and dusted. It's going to happen, do you think, yeah? Intervention here?
Well, as a previous report was saying, the American network saying that it could happen within the next 48 hours, these cruise missile strikes. The very calibrated Western media more or less desperately trying to explain to populations that don't want any such attack that it is necessary and the red line was crossed, therefore it must happen.
But of course there's been no UN mandate to do this yet. At the same time, the UK Parliament's been recalled for Thursday. NATO's planning an emergency meeting tomorrow. Is the UN likely to give that mandate anytime soon?
Of course, the UN will never give that mandate. The National Security Council of Britain is meeting because David Cameron, the Prime Minister here, foreshortened his holiday. It's interesting that National Security Council was set up in 2010 to talk about national security of this country, Britain. And most of that was about Al-Qaeda, that nebulous concept. And Britain and the United States are now avowedly supporting Al-Qaeda-linked groups. If anything, one would see in a normal scenario that countries should come to the aid of the Assad government against those Al-Qaeda-linked brigades that certainly Carla Del Ponte, the UN weapons inspector, a few months ago said were responsible for chemical attacks.
Well, of course, this ratcheting up of the war talk coming as UN inspectors are still working to establish exactly what happened or didn't happen there. They still haven't come forward. They haven't actually got there to do it properly yet, but they haven't come forward with any clear, concise information yet. Is it going to make any difference anyway, even if they did?
No difference at all. They're staying at a very nice hotel, the Four Seasons in Damascus. I know in the rest of Syria that the Russians have delivered humanitarian aid and have started evacuating people. The UN weapons inspectorate, we hear from memoirs from people like Blix and Baradei later about the pressure they're put under. We, of course, know now from Edward Snowden that the UN headquarters is bugged, so those inspectors presumably have surveillance devices on them. The honourable thing, some might argue, is for them all to resign en masse because they're supposed to be creating peace, and whatever report they come out with will be construed in a way to justify the kinds of US attacks that people are envisaging. But of course we know it's the Americans that use chemical weapons, whether in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. I think they're celebrating a speech by Martin Luther King Jr., someone who was opposed to those American chemical attacks. And we know now the CIA that they supported Saddam's use of them against Iran. And of course the Americans use chemical weapons in Fallujah, white phosphorus. So the idea that NATO countries can talk about the use of chemical weapons when it's themselves that have been using it. Those UN inspectors and let alone Ban Ki-moon have a lot to answer for, I think.
Well, if and when an intervention does happen, Britain and the US seem convinced it would be a short-term campaign, a very short campaign. Do you agree?
The Institute of War Studies in the United States, the man, I think his name is Chris Harmer, who devised the Tomahawk strategy, supposedly said, yes, pinpoint accuracy, this will work. He's now distancing himself from those remarks, saying that isn't the way forward. Israel has started supplying gas masks to its population, saying, apparently, according to Chinese news agencies, that Israel doesn't have enough gas masks. And other people are saying the USS Marne, USS Gravely, USS Barry, USS Ramage, those four destroyers in the Mediterranean, the relatives of the thousands of US troops on those ships better start asking questions, because Syria has Onyx and Iskander missiles that can penetrate the hulls of those ships. So if Syria does react, certainly the idea that this will be a short conflict seems patently absurd.
A final quick thought from you, Afshin. Syria's foreign minister says the alleged chemical attack was launched by the rebels and foreign mercenaries. And we heard America saying last night that they didn't believe that they could have got hold of any weapon stockpiles like that, the opposition. Could they have had any access to the chemical weapons along the way here? Are they totally secure?
I think the important question here is Britain and the United States and France, let alone Saudi Arabia and Qatar, have been supplying the al-Nusra Front, whether avowedly, by mistake, or whatever. The chemical weapons, the whole idea about those horrific pictures of chemical weapons being used is of no relevance to what we're now talking about. The possibility of a scenario that will kill way more children, create way more refugees. The UN is talking about 1 million refugees, children refugees at the moment. The people now in the dock are the NATO countries themselves, and if anything, it's up to world powers on the UN Security Council like Russia and China to get together and explain to Washington and to London that there will be serious consequences for both of them if they act outside of any standards of post-World War II international law.
Afshin Rattansi, thanks for your thoughts tonight. Afshin Rattansi in London there.